you don't plan your life thinking you're going to be a stage 4 blood cancer survivor, or even having stage 4 blood cancer. You don't. And I was, again, on the trajectory on the V75 side. I was a CEO trying to manage a company. We were doing good. We were sort of building up, and then this thing happened. And I remember I was like, okay, I have cancer. This is going to be the next thing in my crosshairs, not anything else. For the next 6 months, and again, we're still thinking 6 months, I'm going to put cancer in my crosshairs, and I'm going to beat it.
Earlier on, you mentioned that you were a cancer survivor, right? And this aligns with what I want to talk about in terms of your greatest challenge. And it happens to be still chronological, because around the time when we set all of that in motion with regards to your involvement in the company on the board level, cancer reared its ugly head.
Yes.
So what is the triumph? And what are the trials? What were the trials? What's the triumph with regards to your experience as a cancer survivor?
Yeah, I think, I am a stage 4 blood cancer survivor. I was diagnosed in October 2022. It was, very you don't plan your life thinking you're going to be a stage 4 blood cancer survivor, or even having stage 4 blood cancer. You don't. And I was, again, on the trajectory on the V75 side. I was a CEO trying to manage a company. We were doing good. We were sort of building up, and then this thing happened. And first of all, I remembered there was a period from, let's say May 2022 to September 2022, where we were still getting tests done. We were still getting a lot of the diagnostics done. So we were unsure. And I remember I had to take a lot of time away from work. And then I made a decision to go overseas, because it was just we were not figuring out what was wrong. I remember on my way to, I was heading home. On my way to going home, I called all the directors in a meeting, and I was explaining, look, listen, I'm going overseas in October of 2022, and we're gonna go deal with this potential issue. We didn't know it was cancer then, and I said I'll need to take time off, at least 6 months. My estimation was 6 months. And the biggest thing on my mind when you're thinking about cancer is cost. How are you going to pay for medical treatment? And how are you going to sustain yourself? And I remember the first thing that came out of the board's decision, which I didn't even, I would say, ask explicitly for, was like, okay, you just go, we'll pay your salary, and you just we'll take care of things here. We're going to continue paying your salary as long as, we'll continue paying your salary as long as you're over there and you're getting better. Come back to us healthy. That's it. It was simple as that. And that to me was a very defining moment in terms of the V75 DNA. You do not, and I reiterate this, you do not find that in other companies locally, where they can just take a chunk of their payroll and just put it towards somebody who's potentially dying. That is not something that happens. And so I was I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was, because I was so taken back by it. And of course, you had paid me a visit to my house too, and that was pretty emotional for me to see you show up like that. And there was other folks who came and definitely assisted in many ways. But we went overseas, and I was diagnosed stage 4 classical Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a form of blood cancer. And I remember I was like, okay, I have cancer. This is going to be the next thing in my crosshairs, not anything else. For the next 6 months, and again, we're still thinking 6 months, I'm going to put cancer in my crosshairs, and I'm going to beat it. And that's where it started. The regimen that I went on, every time you do a few cycles of chemotherapy, you would do a scan, a PET CT scan. So they would try to mitigate the amount of toxic chemicals they put inside of you. So if you're in complete remission after 4 months, it would stop. So it's easier in the body. So we started December with my first treatment, my first 2 treatments in December, and then at the end of January, after my 4th treatment, I would do a scan. We did the scan at the end of January, and the thing that some stats about Hodgkin lymphoma, it is one of the most rarest cancers on earth, but it's one of the most curable ones. So about 80% of people survive it after what we call frontline therapy. So the first best available therapy out there. 80+% of people recover completely or have a complete remission. When I heard that, I was like, great, this is gonna be me. I'm gonna be in the 80%. At the end of January, when we did the first scan, my cancer actually spread, which means that I was not getting the necessary value out of the chemotherapy. It was actually not doing anything for me, pretty much. Every single one of my tumor spots were growing. And so when I heard that, at that point, a lot of it was up to my doctors. My doctors would come, they would tell me everything they're doing, and I was like, okay, sure, this is all very technical. I don't need to get involved here. I don't want to get involved. I'm not a doctor. And then I remember when that happened, I was like, I need to take control here. I need to own this next couple of months.
I want to pause you right there.
Yeah.
And I want to highlight the fact that throughout that entire ordeal, I never once saw you in a distraught state. You know, like folks will have these stages of coming to grips with their current reality, their new reality. It's almost as if you weren't human, dude. But you were, but in a better sense. But that is, I believe that is resilience personified that I saw from you. Throughout all of that, it was just, this is a problem. I'm going to solve it. While I may feel what I feel, I'm not going to let that get the better of me. Mm-hmm. That was amazing. That was inspiring to me, but yeah.
Yeah, that mindset, I think, I try to bind it to something. And for me, my favorite form of cricket is Test cricket, which is the one that they play over 5 days. Everybody hates it because it's boring and they take really long to play shots. For me, that is the way that I try to do life, which is like playing Test cricket. There are going to be sessions where you're going to be walking out and it's an overcast condition at Lord's and Jimmy Anderson is running in, and you're going to nick one to first slip. You're going to nick one to first slip. No matter how good you are, you will get out, but you will have a second innings to come out and bat again. And some days it's just about grinding 3 hours with scoring 5 runs in 3 hours. It's just about sticking through the tough times, because there will come a time when that bowler gets tired, and then that's when you attack. And that is a sort of mindset that I always had, even before cancer. That was it. And with cancer, it's amplified to a huge lot. But yeah, just to point out that that's where that comes from, I think. I just sort of live life like I'm playing Test cricket. But yeah, after we did the scan and the cancer was growing, I started to read a ton of papers. I started to look into different alternative treatments within the medical field. I started reading journals. I think I did about 200, just go into different types of treatments. I even followed, there's this platform called NCCN, National Cancer Comprehensive Network, which is a standard of care for all US patients that all hospitals could follow. Most of them do. And it outlines the different options you have. So I took that and just started researching, okay, which one is best? Because the next step was, I'm not in that 80%. I'm not going to be in that 80% that's going to survive with frontline therapy. So we did a second line of therapy, which was using some more newer drugs that's targeted. After the first 2 months of doing that, so this was March, we did a scan and tumors shrunk. So things started to shrink. And I was like, this is good. This is good news. I am going to leave here in 6 months, potentially 6 to 8 months, and I can go back home, be with my family. And the last cycle we did in May, we did it, and the scans showed it's also shrinking still. But the rule is that after 6 months, you need to do 1 month after that, no treatment, to do a scan. So you're not putting any of the chemotherapy in your body after the 6 months period, and then you do a scan to see if there's any growth that happens when there's no poison in you. And we did that scan in June 16th, 2023. And it was horrible. The scan showed that it had spread even further. It had gone to a point where I couldn't walk a block. Like I couldn't get up and walk up and down the street. Not even up the street, to be honest. It got to that point, and we were like, we're not getting a solution here. Frontline has failed us, second line has failed us. We need to figure out a more radical approach to things. And that's when I was transferred to the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. And they took a look at me, and they were shocked, because they were like, this is very odd for a young male with no previous family cancer history to not be responsive to traditional chemotherapy. It's completely weird. They were very surprised by that. And they were also very excited, because they at the end of the day, those guys are researchers. They're more researchers than doctors, I would say. So they were so interested, like, okay, from their point of view, this is a challenge. I need to fix this guy. How do I do that? And they started to put together plans on new treatments that had just, which was still in the experimental phases of things. Now it's more standardized, but it was still experimental. They had just done a very small phase 2 clinical trial with the regiment, and only about 30 people they did, which is an extremely small sample size. Typically, for you to have a study validated, you need thousands. They just did 30. And the data was saying 96% recovered after 2 years, of treatment, which is a good amount. So we did that. I went to Mount Sinai. The guys walked me through it. They're like, you're gonna do 4 cycles of it, and it's gonna wreck you. It's gonna completely wreck you. Whatever you thought you experienced in the first line and the second line, this is gonna challenge you even further. And it did. The first month, I was like, this is okay, not too bad. I've experienced this before. The second month, I couldn't speak for an entire month. My entire GI tract was blistered. I couldn't eat any solid food for an entire month. I became severely malnourished. I had to drink Ensure Plus and protein shakes, and I was still I would just keep losing weight, more and more weight. And it's a very, very hard. Sometimes you don't realize you have cancer, especially blood cancer, until you look in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, you see all your hair gone and your body that you've accustomed to putting on this shirt and it fits, but now it's extra large. That breaks you no matter what you do. And especially when you look at yourself in the morning when you get up and you see that image, you're like, I'm not gonna make it, this is it. And I have to constantly remind myself that this is the tough 3-hour period where you're not gonna score any runs. The only thing you're gonna do is pick the length of the ball and you're gonna play it as best as you can. And that's it. You have to give it your all to not be out, because there will come a time when you'll actually be able to play a shot. And right after that, we did a scan September 19th, 2023, and it showed complete remission. And they were like, we're good now, but we want you to do a bone marrow transplant. They were talking to me about it before, but now they're like, listen, the standard of care here is after you do this stuff, we need to replace your bone marrow. We want to completely make sure that this doesn't come back. So they fast-tracked me to get a bone marrow transplant in September of 2023. I spent 32 days in hospital. The actual bone marrow transplant, where they burn the bone marrow clean of chemotherapy, high-dose chemotherapy, that made you feel like regular therapy. But what they do is that they extract stem cells from you first, and they freeze it. So those are healthy cells that was fixed with the treatment. They burn your bone marrow clean, and they're like, okay, great. Now we're going to put back in those cells. They put back about 2.6 million stem cells into me. That is when it was challenging. I remember because the visitors weren't allowed at certain times, so I was alone for the most of the day. And I remember one day it's called engraftment. The process of engraftment is where you put the stem cells back and it actually activates the bone marrow to produce healthy cells. Engraftment in my type of transplant doesn't happens most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't. Luckily, my experience, it happened, and I was able to engraftment happened. But while it was happening, I remember completely losing the ability to walk, to talk, to take care of myself. I remember one night I woke up shaking, and they thought I was going into septic shock. And then there was a team of 15 doctors rushing in, trying everything, and I'm dizzy. I remember those experiences every single day. After the month, I was discharged, and that discharge process, I was just happy. I remember the nurse coming to me and say, "We're ready. We're ready for you. We have your wheelchair here." And I said, "No, I'm going to walk out of this hospital." I was not going to be in a wheelchair. I was like, I'm walking out of this hospital. And my dad, who was with me the entire ordeal, he was there, and he was like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm walking out of here." So I remembered walking very slowly from the 4th floor, taking the elevator down, out to the car on my own. And I made sure that it was like that. And that process of rehabilitation over the next couple of weeks was tough. I remember me and my dad would take scheduled walks from here, probably like 100 meters away there was a park. That's where how much I could have walked. And I had to sit down immediately. I'd be panting for breath. Those experiences and overcoming that particular part of my life, I think it just kind of, I feel like I'm Superman right now. I feel like I could conquer anything. I feel like there's nothing that can come at me that I can't beat. I feel like once I put my mind to something, it just sort of reinforced that mindset that I had, that I will be able to take on anything that I put in my crosshairs. And it's that. And the reason I introduced myself as a cancer survivor is because it's with me. As much as I don't want it to be with me, it is with me, and it defines me in some way, but it doesn't. At least post cancer, does not. I don't plan my life around cancer. I plan my life on doing the things that I want to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is the most inspiring story I've heard in a very, very long while, man. Thank you for sharing that.
No worries.
And, I agree with you. You introduce yourself. You go right ahead and introduce yourself as a cancer survivor, because every single thing, both harrowing and blissful, have precipitated the individual that you are right now. And so it's a part of you.